Joining us today is Dr. Andrine Shufran, the curator of the Insect Adventure Museum at OSU. And today let's talk bees, native bees. The honeybees get all the credit for pollination, but we have many species of native bee that are just as active in our gardens.
The honeybee is just one species. The other native bees make up for 4,000 different species of bees that are helping to pollinate our flowers and crops.
And these fall into about 6 major families. And one that's probably really familiar is buzzing around down here is the bumblebee or the bumbus species. Tell me a bit about what they do.
Large bee, very brightly colored, black and yellow, very furry. You'll see them working in a solitary fashion on each of the flowers, collecting nectar and pollen. Here's one right here who's joined us. And packing that pollen on their bodies to then take back and to provision the larvae inside wood or underground.
They live underground and they live solitary, unlike our honeybees.
Right. The honeybees are of great concern because they sting in a group. These guys almost never sting because they pollinate and live their lives alone, solitary.
Excellent. And we have a number of different pollinators in the garden. I also brought some pinned specimens so we could take a closer look at those.
Okay.
Andrine, we were just talking about this group. These are the bumblebees, but you're holding a very similar looking group of insect. Tell me about these bees.
These are the wood bees or the carpenter bees, and they're in a different group. You'll see that they're a little, they're bigger, a little less brightly colored, and a lot less furry on the abdomen. They also make their home in a different place. These are carpenter bees, so they make their homes for the young in wood, rotten wood, old wood, or even sometimes wood in your house.
Yeah, and so sometimes people think of them as a problem if they're drilling holes into an old deck or something, but keeping that deck well sealed, and it's mostly they're looking for soft wood that they could chew. So.
Right. Along the eaves is often a common place because that wood gets exposed to moisture a lot, and people don't paint or treat the eaves as often as they should, and so they'll see a lot of those large holes, which can be very destructive and hard to fill. But that's the solution. Keep them filled, keep them painted, keep them sealed.
All right. And, you know, aside from that, potential damage, they're wonderful pollinators.
They are great pollinators, busy every hour of the daylight, helping to make fruits and vegetables, also native plants, helping to make their seeds.
Excellent. The next group, I think, is an enormous family, the halictids. And I think also quite familiar. We call them sweat bees.
Yes, everybody's been stung by a sweat bee. They come to your face, they like to collect the salt from bodies, and then you put your hand on, they give you a little tiny sting, you go ouch. But this huge family, even though these two species look very different, they're still in the same family of bees. There are thousands of species.
And some of these will live solitary, and other species will live colonial.
Some are semi-social, so they'll live in a small group together, and then again they pollinate lots of native plants, and they'll pollinate some fruit crops also a little bit.
Now the bee that I find is most attributed to fruit pollination, and we only have one little specimen of him here, and that's the mason bee, or sometimes called the orchard bee.
Orchard bee, right. And very colorful, very bright and metallic. And these are often called orchard bees because you'll find them pollinating pears, apples, and the stone fruits like peaches and apricots, which we grow here a lot. And so these are very important. People often make houses for orchard and mason bees in their garden to actually encourage them to live and reproduce and to help pollinate.
And in addition to the honeybees, this is one of the few bees that are commercially raised, so to speak, for crop production.
Yeah, though certainly not on the scale that the honeybee is.
Now, Andrine, this bee is actually very closely related to the mason bee we just looked at. They're in the same family, but they look so very different.
They do. This is the leafcutter bee, which most people will be familiar with because they've seen the perfect little circular cutout on their rose plants or on their fruit trees where the bee is collecting a perfect little circle that it cuts out to take back to provision for the young again.
And they'll kind of cap up the hole that they've made where they've laid their egg to feed the young in there.
Exactly, in a perfect tiny little tube.
So, one that looks very similar to this, but not quite related. This is the
Coletidae.
And this is a primitive bee. Pretty a lot of the other bees kind of evolved from this, right?
Correct. It is what they say is derived, what other species are derived from. So it's an ancient species, an ancient family, and then the ancestor to many others.
And of course, like all of these, a very active pollinator in the landscape.
This one is a ground dweller. So you'll find it, again, underground and not in the wood.
And that's a great comment, that a lot of these bees are going to be living in the ground, and they might fly up if you walk near their nest or something, but they're really not going to hurt you unless you directly step on them.
Right. The bumblebees and the other bees that make tunnels underground, of course, they're going to respond to vibrations, the lawnmower, the weed eater, stomping children, and that could be alarming if you see a couple of bees come out. But since they're solitary, the groups will be small. You won't get a large stinging mass like you can with Africanized honeybees or even regular honeybees. You'll see these in ones and twos or small groups, but not in a big colony.
Very good. One such bee that is ground dwelling like that, and a common name is the mining bee.
Miners,
I'm calling it the Andrine bee.
It's the Andrinidae, another family of bees, but yes, it does sound very similar to my own name. My parents did not name me after this bee, but we don't have to tell anybody.
And
another super pollinator, busy in the garden, taking care of lots of seed production.
And this is one that's active early in the season, so
right.
Our early spring flowers.
Before everything else has gotten enough family built up to actually be visible, these get started, and so you'll see them early in the season.
All right, well, we've been looking at bees, but I wanted to briefly talk about a fly, because it looks like it could be a wasp or a bee, and a lot of people confuse it, right?
This is an amazing family. These are the syrphids, or the flower flies, but they are imitators. They use camouflage to mimic bees and wasps, and you can see it'd be hard for most people to tell the difference between a fly or a bee because the coloration is the same. Flies have only 2 wings, so if these will hold still, you can count their wings and know for sure.
I also look at the eyes. They have those very typical fly eyes.
Yeah, they're very distinctive, but you'll see there's, again, thousands of species of syrphids that are busy pollinating. They're very specific on flowers and very attracted to them, and you'll find them very busy helping to pollinate. I've even seen recently on the internet on several web pages where they'll have a picture of a fly, because it's a beautiful picture of this fly, but it's intended to be a honeybee. It'll say honeybee. So you have to kind of watch it. These are perfect imitators.
They sure are. And in addition to being great pollinators, their larvae are also amazing predators. So what a great group.
Right out in the open on leaves. Like other things, beetles, they can do a really great job in helping in the garden.
Thank you so much, Andrine.
Thank you.